Good morning. My name is Norma Arciniega Langwell. I currently serve as the president of Los Alcaldes de Bejar. I would like to begin this morning's event by thanking Bexar County Clerk, the Honorable Lucy Adame-Clark, for allowing us to present our work on the Los Alcaldes project. This project is going on 4 years in the making. Aside from the pandemic setbacks, we have made great strides in the continued success of the project. Before I move on, I would like to express our appreciation for all those who continue to work diligently on the project. Thank you again to the Honorable Lucy Adame-Clark and her staff. Thank you to our board and advisory board members, Art Martinez Guevara, Dr. Amy Porter, Dr. Francis Galan, Dr. Andres Tejerina, Dr. Frank de la Teja, Dr. Felix Almaraz, Erica Haskins, Anthony Delgado, and Kate Hines. Also, thank you to Albert Ziggy Gonzalez, the Texas State Historical Association, the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, and our Los Alcaldes de Bejar members. Thank you. We will begin this morning's session with an overview of the origins and the duties of the alcaldes. Then we will learn about the 4 men in the portraits on display that you see here, followed by a brief discussion on the process of the paintings. We will then discuss the present and future entries of the alcaldes and close with a discussion on the significance of the Los Alcaldes project. At this time, I would like to introduce our Vice President, Art Martinez Guevara. Art Martinez Guevara is a historian, author, and an attorney. He holds a Master of Arts in History from Sam Houston State University, a Master of Arts in Systematic Theology from St. Mary's University, and a doctorate in law from St. Mary's University School of Law. His law firm, the Martinez Guevara Law Firm, specializes in civil litigation and is currently representing the Alamo Defenders Descendants Association and the Taquiam Tribe of Mission Indians in their respective lawsuits to preserve the Alamo Cenotaph and the Mission Valero Cemetery. He is an adjunct faculty at Northwest Vista College and served as mayor of Von Army, Texas from 2008 to 2015. He is the author of several books on early Texas and the winner of the 2016 Texas State Geological Society Grand Prize Book Award and the 2014 Presidio Vieja Award, and then the 2021 Bachram Book Award and the 2021 Conservation Society of San Antonio Publication Award. His most recent book publications include his award-winning book entitled Tejano Patriot, The Revolution Life of Jose Francisco Ruiz, 1783 to 1840, and San Antonio Marriages, 1703 to 1846, Matrimony in Colonial, Mexican, and Republic, Texas. Welcome, Art Martinez Guevara.
Thank you, Norma, for that wonderful introduction. I'd like to spend a little time this morning to discuss what an alcalde was, what were their duties, and where the office originated. The word alcalde actually comes from the experience of the Reconquista on the Spanish Peninsula. So we have Islamic Spain, a spanning period of about 1,000 years. Under the Islamic governance system, each town was governed by a Sharia law judge, who was in Arabic al-Qadi. As the Spanish reconquered lands previously held by the Islamic rulers in Spain, they adopted the same system and Hispanicized the word to the term alcalde. An alcalde was a judge. It's often mistranslated in English as mayor. And so there's some overlap. But the alcalde's day-to-day job was a judge of first hearing. So if you sued your neighbor for something, or you were picked up for public drunkenness or whatnot, you had to deal with the alcalde. The alcalde also presided over the town council. And so that's where we get the analogy for a mayor. On the frontier, the system of law was strained, to say the least. There was no institutions of legal education, yet they were fully expected to provide the legal procedure, and their cases were appealed up through the audiencia, which in the case of San Antonio was in Guadalajara, and then ultimately possibly up to the government in Spain. So the alcaldes were typically elected by the ayuntamiento or the town council. They typically had prior service on the ayuntamiento and another function, either as a procurador, which was a city attorney, or as a regidor, councilman. And they were trained by apprenticeship. And so what we see is a lot of the alcaldes having previously served under prior alcaldes in various capacities. Those could be what they call testigos de asistencia, or assistant witnesses. San Antonio de Bejar was constantly plagued by a lack of notaries or official scribes, and so they would pull young attorneys in to transcribe the proceedings or to certify statements that were made, depositions and whatnot. And this is how they would gain their legal training. We also know from the various probate inventories that were left that certain families maintained the common legal texts of the Spanish Empire, and those were passed along. And those were available and accessible for the various upcoming alcaldes. The legal procedure was very different than what we are familiar with today in the Anglo-American system. When a charge was brought against somebody, the alcalde also served as the chief investigator. So they were the ones who conducted the depositions, questioned the witnesses. They were often sent off to determine causes of death, things of that nature. So it's very more akin to what we learned out of the continental system of law. And everything was done by legal belief. So we have these wonderful sumarias cases, hundreds of pages long, where they investigate the various issues. Of course, San Antonio was known for being highly litigious, especially the Canary Islanders. They like to sue. They sued often, and that gives us a wonderful window into that time frame. So that's the office of alcalde. When the Republic of Texas was created, the Congress of the Republic, rather than abandoning the Spanish system of municipal government, they in essence merged it with the Anglo-American system. And so what were called municipios, municipalities, became counties. The office of alcalde was translated into the county judge. So that's why we have counties that are led by judges here in Texas. The regidores became the county commissioners, the sheriffs, and whatnot. And then the Anglo-American system of municipal government, the city, was kind of transposed on top of it. So we see in the first Congress of the Republic of Texas, San Fernando de Bejar became county of there, and they created a new city of San Antonio that overlapped. And so that's how we have our current overlapping system of local governance. So it's tremendous heritage. A lot of people don't realize it because the names have changed. I think Webb County was the last holdout. They had an alcalde leading right up to the Civil War, where they switched over to the county judge terminology. These alcaldes we're trying to bring back to the public arena were, again, jurists. They were local political leaders, and they were homegrown and home taught. So it's a wonderful reflection of the early San Antonio. With that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Anthony Delgado. And Anthony Delgado is a 9th generation Canary Islander descendant and 11th generation Tejano, who is extremely proud of his familial connections to some of the most notable Hispanic figures in Texas history. spanning the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, to include the first Spanish colonial families that founded what we now know as San Antonio, Texas. Anthony recently retired after serving in the United States Air Force for 40 years. Anthony enjoys serving his community. He is the first vice president for the Canary Islands Descendants Association, secretary for the Trail de Flores chapter of the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail Association. He's an advisory board member for Los Alcaldes de Beja, a former board member of the Friends of Casa Navarro, former advisory board member and board of directors for the Hispanic Heritage Center of Texas. Anthony is also a member and former chairman and board of directors of Los Bejareños Genealogy and Historical Society. Anthony is the host, owner, and founder of Hispanic Heritage Matters Texas, where he facilitates digital conversations among his 2,900 plus followers, sharing Texas Hispanic history and heritage. He recently created the Hispanic Heritage Coalition, a collaboration with San Antonio area organizations focused on researching and promoting our shared Hispanic history and heritage. His passion for genealogy, with a concerted focus on Hispanic genealogy, has afforded him opportunities to meet many wonderful individuals, all with a passion to learn and celebrate their family history. He eagerly and proudly shares with others the fascinating, rich history he has come to learn and love. Mr. Anthony Delgado.
Thank you, Art. I'm not sure where all those lights came from, but thank you. So this morning, I want to introduce you now to the individuals that we have here on display. I always get choked up when I talk about family and I talk about our history, but it's no mistake that they're here, and I want to highlight the period of time that these four individuals represent. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how we got to creating the portraits, and then we'll invite Lois to come up and give some details. First, we have on display Clemente Delgado. Clemente served in 1812, just at the beginning of the struggle for Mexican independence. And then shortly after his term, we find him partnering with Bernardo Gutierrez de Lara and claiming independence from Spain, which is very interesting. And then we have Jose Miguel Arciniega, who was a legislator and land commissioner. He wrote hundreds of laws, many of which are still on the books today. And we can thank Jose Miguel Arciniega for the town of Bastrop today. He was important in naming Bastrop, and hopefully the folks in Bastrop will be able to recover from the fire that's currently blazing there. We then have Juan Seguin. We've seen Juan Seguin before. Many are familiar with Juan Seguin. You've seen his portrait. You haven't seen this one, but you've seen the one where he typically is in his military uniform. He was a military and political leader. He led Tejanos at the 1835 siege of Beja. He led the Tejanos at the Battle of San Jacinto. And then later, much like many of our ancestors, he found the need to have to flee for the safety of himself as well as his family. And then we have the portrait of Francisco Antonio Ruiz, the son of Jose Francisco Ruiz. And so we have this turbulent time in the Mexican struggle for independence. We've got Jose Arciniega, who's responsible for colonizing a lot of the new Texas, newer Texas. We have Juan Seguin, who's leading troops in battles. And then we have Francisco Antonio Ruiz, who has to identify those that were killed during the Battle of the Alamo. Can you imagine having to go in and identify your neighbors, your cousins? So, we've seen, as I mentioned, we've seen Francisco Antonio Ruiz, we've seen Juan Seguin. We have this list of alcaldes. There was 105, 106 terms between 1731 from the initial establishment until 1836, 37, when, as Art had eloquently talked about the transition to the new form of government. We have their names, but who were they? And so we're going to talk a little bit more about the details of how we get to their bios. But you know, when you walk in City Hall and you see the portraits of the mayors, where are the portraits of the alcaldes?
Yes.
So I was talking to Norma and you know, we said, hey, we want to research these alcaldes. Yeah. And you know, gosh, can you imagine the volumes that we could find of information and publish in an encyclopedia? That would be really cool. And so Norma said, well, you know what? Why don't we have portraits done? Well, how? You know, they didn't sit for the artists, right? When they were at Alcalde, they didn't sit for an artist. And so how would we go about doing this? So we chatted and we said, you know, God, it would be really cool if we could find somebody that was kind of like maybe a forensic artist, right? Somebody who isn't just an artist, but somebody who, you know, based off of science, who understands facial structures, who could maybe, I don't know, maybe we could get some pictures of their descendants, and then this forensic artist could maybe look at it and say, you know, the nose is twitched a little bit, maybe to the right or to the left, or maybe it's short or long. Okay, all right, so do you know any? I don't know any. Do you know any? I don't know any. How are we going to find a forensic artist? Well, you know, it's not good enough that we have to find a forensic artist, but this forensic artist, their art needs to be able to prove that you know that they're good, right? I mean, because if you have an artist and you look at the painting, you go, wow, that's really good. And you have a forensic artist who does forensic work, and you go, wow, that's really good. But not just any forensic, somebody who's proven that their work is credible, right? So we want a forensic artist, we want somebody whose work is credible. We want somebody who's recognized, right? Somebody who's like kind of like an expert in their field. So gosh, and how are we going to find somebody who's a forensic artist, who's recognized as an expert in their field? Oh, and wouldn't it be neat if they were kind of like internationally renowned, right? So somebody who's respected not just in their precinct, their county, their state, not just in the United States, but somebody who's recognized internationally. Somebody who has helped thousands of cases of crimes with her forensic art. Somebody who holds the Guinness World Book of Records for her artwork that has solved hundreds and hundreds of crimes. So luckily, that gem, that diamond exists. Who has all of those attributes is Lois Gibson. She's here with us today. She is the one who has fantastically taken the pictures that we have presented to her, looked at those pictures, studied those pictures, analyzed those features, and has created the images of what our ancestors looked like. And so without further ado, I'd like to present to you Lois Gibson.
I love Anthony. I love his passion. I should analyze his handwriting. I could figure out he's probably a lot like me. No, I mean, I can tell you know what I'm saying? He's like, never mind, if you get to know me, I'm like him. Down on the Riverwalk, that was my office in the 70s, starting, let's see, 77, 76, 78, 79. I did portraits of tourists on the Riverwalk. I did almost 3,000 people sitting there, and they were realistic, anatomically correct. I mean, I just knocked myself out. Some people came back years later and they said they had a frame on their mantle. So that was my place in front of Juana Dix. Does anybody old person? Juana Dix, and then I was in front of Paloma del Rio. And then you know where Rainforest Cafe, there's a bridge real near that. I was under that bridge, did about 1,000 people. So that made me able to draw really well. So I went to Houston. I went to dental school here too. And I went to Houston and I forced myself on the Houston Police Department because I knew I could draw people from somebody just talking about a face they saw. And that sounds impossible, but I got it down with science. I wrote a textbook about it, which I don't recommend writing a textbook. Don't do this at home, kids. And I'm in the Guinness Book of Records because I do it so well. I've helped catch over 1,266 people. And I went to Walmart and bought 4 of these. Yeah. So that's it. I'm just pictures. That's all I am, and I'm just so grateful to be part of this. I'll tell about the process. I can feel vibes from normal and tell about the process. The process, yes, she approached me and she gave me these pictures. And if you look at them with my eyes, there's the same eyebrows, eye relationship, the eyes to the eyebrows, like Tom Cruise's eyebrows are real close to his eyes. Never mind, Paul McCartney's eyebrows are way off. The ratios of the features, I could see a commonality. And I'm talking about some beautiful people too. Seriously, I'm sorry. And so I extrapolated this, and I know. And then afterward, I've seen a relative recently, nobody told me, I didn't see this relative, that looks like him, and it's like a great-great-great-grandson. Here's part of the process. Okay, you've got to be able to do age progression if you're gonna do this. And I wrote about how to do age progression in my textbook. That was easy to get. Because the pictures of these people, like she's 19, right? Whatever ages, you have to bring them to the age of your subject. Well, I'm like one of the best in the world because I do babies. This is a 1-year-old baby. I age progressed. I couldn't see this. I age progressed. They put them on TV, and the girl got back her brothers. So upside, I got grandbabies. I want to do age progression. I'm talking about some handsome people right there. Anyway, this guy got away with murder for 30 years. He's 33, made him look 63. I made him look 63. And in 10 days, they got him. And then also to get deeper, I've had screaming great success lately. If somebody is down to the bone and they're murdered, you can't figure out who they are unless you get Aunt Lois in the picture. And then if you do that, why would you want to do that? Well, if you're the detective, you can't solve that case until you find out who's murdered. Then if you find out, you go to their mom and go, who were they with last? Why, her boyfriend who was so violent, they had a gun in the night. You know, you talk to him. So even with a piece of a skull, I was able to see the hair, this is like just a piece. And I will just, and if you don't like this, I'm so sorry, I pray, and I get a hairstyle, I get a vision of the hairstyle. And other things, but whatever. And then baby Grace, we're talking about going to, find bodies. This was the most horrific thing, and she was burned. But anyway, I have to see through them. And then I also did Clemente Delgado. Look at these people. Look, and then somebody came to that unveiling, and my printer ran out of me. They look just like Clemente. They look. I went, oh my gosh! I go, get over here, have a picture taken. And he's an investigator in Dallas, I think, arson, and I work at the police department. He's trying to talk investigation. I just kept looking at his eyebrows and I'm like, oh my God, it's Clemente Delgado. But that was the same thing. So that's the process. I'm thrilled to be involved, to be able to pull up the ancestors and give a really scientifically good guess, an educated, very educated guess as to how they would look. And that's going to fall during the thing. And then lastly, this is my latest, Francisco Ruiz. Oh my gosh. If you want to find me, it's Lois. That's a 4-letter word. It's not Lois, L-O-I-S, Gibson. I have paintings and stuff all over there, but Francisco. I feel connected when I do these paintings. I'm gonna say, get over here. Even when I do murders from the description of like a 10-year-old girl, that's the last case I had. A 10-year-old girl saw her daddy get killed, and it's gonna be a great sketch. I start getting a sense of the killer. But Francisco, I'm gonna put this on my website, the Lois Gibson, whatever, Facebook, Lois Gibson. This man is so sensitive, and he has seen sorrow. You can see it in this picture. I feel like Anthony, and you can see it. I'm gonna cry. You can see that he saw sorrow, but he's also very attractive. It's just, he's just a really wonderful looking guy. It was an honor to do it, and all I've ever wanted to do when I was on the Riverwalk, I used to think, why don't they hire me to do these expensive mayor portraits? Because I knew I could be great at doing it. And then after the Riverwalk, well, so anyway, my dream has come true. And after the Riverwalk, I did, as of October 2018, 5,000 cases, 5,000 different murders and robbers. And some of them are good looking, like they're late teens, early 20s, smooth skin, good looking. So I'm ready, I'm willing and ready. And I'm 71, and I'd like to do as many fine art portraits as I can before I go to the big drawing board in the sky. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Wasn't that interesting? I mean, oh my goodness, when I first saw Jose Miguel Arciniega, I just immediately connected with that portrait. It was like, that was him. You know, there was just no doubt about it. It's a beautiful thing. That the gift that Lois has is like no other. That's right. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Francis Galan. He's an assistant professor of history at Texas A&M University of San Antonio, where he teaches courses in history of Mexico, Texas, and Latin America. He received his PhD in history from Southern Methodist University in Dallas. His book titled Los Días, the first capital of Spanish Texas, was published in 2020 by Texas A&M University Press and a finalist for this year's Ramirez Family Award for most significant scholarly book from the Texas Institute of Letters. Welcome, Dr. Galan.
Thank you so much, Norma, for that introduction, and it's just simply an honor for me to be here in front of you at this incredible event that is just unlike any I've seen. Being from San Antonio, being a South Texas native, but thinking to myself, what am I doing getting into this project? Because my research was on early Tejanos in East Texas and Northwestern Louisiana, and it really is like a whole other world over there. But a number of those settlers ended up right here in San Antonio, de Bejar, in 1773. Half went back and eventually established Nacogdoches, and a lot of those connections with their former neighbors in the Natchitoches area of Northwestern Louisiana, and the other half, well, less than half, they ended up here in San Antonio and ended up on lands belonging to the former Mission San Antonio de Valero, and a number of them who end up eventually on the south side of San Antonio, southern Bexar County. But I just thought, Los Alcaldes was a way for me to kind of introduce myself into San Antonio's own history, which I purposely tried to avoid because we have the greats in Borderlands history, Dr. Almaraz, Dr. Boyle, Dr. Hinojosa, who have written about San Antonio extensively. But this is just like no other project in talking about these alcaldes de San Antonio de Bejar. And I was tasked, or I kind of volunteered for one of the oldest ones because I just was really interested in like the earliest of the histories. And so the latest entries in the Handbook of Texas, we have Juan Curbelo, who was one of the Canary Islanders, listed like the third family or so. And he was in line from 1680 to 1742. And just like Art mentioned earlier about the litigiousness, I thought once I saw one of those and then he's involved in a lawsuit with another Canary Islander, I said, I don't know if I want to really go on because this is really deep here. And so anyway, he's just but one. Clemente Delgado's entry by none other than Anthony Delgado, direct descendant. Ignacio Francisco Javier Calvillo, by my colleague, Dr. Amy Porter from A&M San Antonio, and Manuel Ituri y Castillo by Erica Haskins. And so there are some entries already in the Handbook of Texas, and it's just really fascinating getting into the archives and doing some of this research. And this is just the beginning, because there are going to be future entries. As it turns out, I didn't just volunteer for Juan Curbelo, but it turns out he has his son, Jose, and so I'm looking forward to doing that research and background. There is also Jose Maria Zambrano, Zambrano that's very important here politically in the early 19th century. And there's just a whole slew of other names that are going to be researched and uncovered. And so I am just simply honored that I get to participate in this project with so many wonderful people. And from another perspective, you know, when I was asked by by Yolanda Kirkpatrick Garcia to research an ancestor of Trinidad de los Santos Coy, who was a Tejano soldier in San Antonio in the early 19th century, I was just very honored to try to discover why this guy, whose father was a Spanish soldier at the Trinidad de Salcedo settlement in East Texas in the first decade of the 19th century, became a revolutionary. And he did get caught up in events in the early 1830s, but basically they're doing the things that they had always been doing on the Texas frontera since the 18th century, and that includes Los Adayas and it includes here. And when I presented at the Alamo, the DRT at the time was in the Alamo, and Leslie, who was there, and they were gracious, Armendina Galan Cifuentes came up and said, "Your dad and I are second cousins." And my first thought was, oye, esta muchacha está loca, because how can I be related? My parents came from Cuba. And as it turns out, it wasn't until I got to graduate school that my dad said, well, no, mi abuelo fue mexicano. And I was like, what? But you always talk about your dad who was Cubano. And then he said, well, yes, he was born and raised in Veracruz, and around the time of the Mexican Revolution decided to went to Cuba to marry Cubana. And so then he says, but my great grandfather was Espanol, was from Asturias, and he had immigrated to Mexico. And growing up here in San Antonio, I had a classmate, Michael Galan, and I said, that's the family, that's a direct descendant of another alcalde, Francisco Javier Galan, who's my namesake, and I'm going, I'm not related, I don't think I am. And so then it turns out that Frank de la Teja did a entry on him some time ago for the Handbook of Texas, and it's just really wild how this kind of just connections, Anthony's talking about these connections locally, regionally, internationally, really is, so that the picture here is not, is the local, certainly, but how even though isolated, you know, there is this engagement with this this broader borderlands in this region. And so I'm really honored to be a part of this and looking forward to a lot more to come. So it is with my greatest of honors to introduce the one, the only, Dr. Andres Tijerina. Dr. Tijerina retired as professor of history at Austin Community College. A West Texas native, he received his BA from Texas A&M University, his MA from Texas Tech University, and his PhD from the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Tijerina is taught at those institutions and at UTSA. He has authored award-winning books, including his classic work, one of my favorites of all time, Tejanos in Texas Under the Mexican Flag, published by Texas A&M University Press, and his other major book, Tejano Empire, Life on the South Texas Ranchos. He edited Andres Sainz's Early Tejano Ranching in Duval County and co-edited Elena Zamora O'Shea's novel entitled El Mesquite. He's won multiple book awards, such as the Presidio La Bahia Prize from the Sons of the Republic of Texas, the Kate Brox Bates Award from the Texas State Historical Association, and the T.R. Feirenbach Award from the Texas Historical Commission, as well as national book awards. Interestingly, his most widely read work is the publication of his Vietnam War combat memoirs in the Time Life book series, The Vietnam Experience. As a pilot in the Air Force, Dr. Tijerina flew over 100 combat missions in Vietnam, receiving the Air Medal and the Distinguished Flying Cross. He retired as a major of the U.S. Air Force Reserve and liaison officer for the U.S. Air Force Academy. Dr. Tijerina has served as professional history consultant on Texas and Tejano history for the 2004 movie The Alamo, for the BBC History Channel, for the Texas Historical Commission, and was the lead historian for the Tricentennial Exhibition, the Whitting Art Museum, in 2017-2018. He's general editor for an endowed book series for Texas A&M University Press, a member and fellow of the Texas State Historical Association, and recently received the National Equity Award from the American Historical Association. He's past president of the Texas Institute of Letters and a director of the board which erected the Tejano Monument at the state capitol in 2012. And you can imagine just being there and watching that unfold, and to seeing the governor present, and to seeing these Latino legislators coming out of the Capitol going, what's going on here, you know? And there's this unveiling of a Tejano monument. And so it's kind of like Anthony talking about getting emotional and sensitive. It's like, wow, this is like history in action, if you will. And Dr. Tijerina was the force, if you will, behind that effort. He co-founded the Handbook of Tejano History with Emilio Zamora, right? And he currently is co-authoring the first ever History of Mexican Americans in Texas as a textbook for the social studies curriculum in Texas public school. And that is also with my history colleague, Dr. Amy Porter. And heck, this cycle goes on and on and on, and keep working. He's working on a 5-volume history. He just mentioned to me about Father Morphy, who's a transnational figure in his writing of Texas history. So it's without further ado that I welcome Dr. Andres Tijerina.
Thank you, Francis. You read that just the way my mother wrote it. You overdid it, Francis. The distinguished people that we should applaud are in this room. The Honorable County Clerk, who really honors us by her presence. Mickey Keeley, direct descendant of the original Texans, the Native Americans, Mickey Cuevas. Norma Langwell. And you know, the beauty of this, really, is that everybody in here is somebody distinguished. And what makes you distinguished, Eric, is that you're directly related to these people. And that, you know, you can't say that in Chicago. You can't say that in Detroit. The people who lived in the missions are the ones that Mickey's related to. The people who were in the governor's mansion and the governor's office here on the military square are directly related to the people sitting on the Trump pew. Norma. Norma's got a street in San Antonio named after her family. And that's because they lived there. This isn't history. This is San Antonio. This is Texas. When you talk history to a normal landlord, Norma Arsenio landlord, you're talking genealogy. It's not just history. She's talking about her great-grandfather. I don't know how many greats. That is what's important about the Alcalde. And Art was saying, Dr. Martinez, that Alcalde comes from the Arab Moorish word. Well, I had a professor once say, when I was at Texas A&M University, and I'm a loyal ag, but my history professor, Dr. Nance, I'll never forget, started out the history of Texas when I took it there at A&M in 1963. The history of Texas, he says, begins on the British Isles. Really? Alcalde comes from the 8th century, medieval Spain, and we have alcaldes here in San Antonio, and we have direct descendants of the alcaldes here in this room, and it begins on the British Isles. It begins on the Iberian Peninsula, people. You eat grapefruit because the Spaniards brought them. It's San Antonio, it's San Diego, because San Diego was the patron saint of Spain. Texas is Mexican. Texas is Hispanic. And it's Arab. It's Muslim. Alcalde comes from the Muslims, just like the watermelon, the grapefruit, and the orange, and all the words that we say, like alcalde, almohada, alfombra, alfalfa. That's Arabs. That ain't the British Isles, guys. That's not old Devonshire. And then the beauty of it is, it's not just the Mexicanos that are directly related. Anybody who becomes a Texan is also smeared with this Mexican and Spanish blood. Because when they learn to say Guadalupe, Alameda, they learn to say San Antonio, and they learn to say Brazos, they become Hispanic. If I can be told my forefathers, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, well, then you can be told your forefathers Bustillo and Castillo and et cetera, et cetera. And if you're Texan, you're Mexican. Either that or you're, and I'll go back to Ohio. And I've always said that. You can be proud. Davy Crockett can be proud to be called a Texan. Well, I can too. And I can speak Mexican and Spanish and be proud to be Spanish. I can be proud to speak Spanish. That's the beauty of Texas. Is that it really does get a hold of you. Once you eat guacamole, you're not going back to work. And so you see a continuum, Art, from the Muslim to the Spanish Reconquista. And the Spaniards bring it to San Antonio. My wife, 8th generation, she's from the people who came in the 1750s. Directly, they didn't call it Nueva Santander for nothing. They came from Santander. And by the way, Juanita, hold your hand up so they can see. 8th generation Texan. You know, one of the maids asked her, you know, I mean, ¿de dónde eres tú? Juanita said, hey, yo soy tejana. I'm not from Nicaragua. I didn't immigrate. Yo soy tejana. And that's a beauty that you've got here. And then it goes over to modern Anglo-Americans. Look, Texas is the place where Anglo-Americans got to be alcaldes. An Anglo-American got to be alcalde. And then, what I read in one of the court cases of Texas, it says, it will thus be seen that the district court of the republic is by legislative succession, the evolution of the alcalde and primary courts. That's legal. That's Texas law. So you start out that it was the principle. And it's not just, again, it's not just a legal. Yes, the alcalde was like a mayor, he was like a county judge. It's more than that. Here's what the San Antonio ordinance said. And I'm translating it for you. The alcalde ordinario is the true father of the vecindario of his respective territory. He's not just the mayor, he's the father. And with the Arciniegas, they didn't name it Arciniega Street just because it's a pretty name from history. It's because that's where the Arciniega live. That's where the Navarros live. That Navarro house, they lived there. So what you have here is a living community. You have thousands of people. Van Orme. Those people are not only the Spaniards who settled there and got there, they're the Native Americans. That's why this man gets emotional, because that out on Loop 410 South, there are thousands of people whose family, whose DNA has been there on the Medina for thousands, tens of thousands of years. It's not just the Arabs, it's not just the Spaniards, it's the natives that you've got in your blood here in San Antonio. That's the beauty of it. The significance of the alcalde? No. Is that it's a living institution and it represents living people who are here in this room. It's not history. It's you. It's your blood. It's living people. I'm going to very, very quickly. What do I have, 2 minutes left? No? Tell me. When the King of Spain saw all of his people coming over to the New World, what they call the New World, and he started thinking, hey man, they're going to set up their own country over there, and I don't want to do that. That's Spain. And I want to remember, I'm the king of that place. It may be South America, Central America, Mexico, North America, whatever, but that is Spain. And so he issued an ordinance. He said, wherever the Spanish flag goes, it is Spain. And it is under my corona. Now you can call it whatever you want, New Spain, whatever, but you're part of Spain and you're under my corona. And he wanted to make sure that they remember that. So he issued edicts right after Columbus to let them know. There's 2 things you're going to always remember. One, that's my crown. Maybe the New World, but it's my crown. And the second thing is you're Roman Catholic or you die. That's 2 things they set out. And so he issued what the other Europeans, especially the English, the British had a system of common law, but not the King of Spain. He said, no. I'm going to write the law. You people don't write the law. I write the laws. And that's the difference between the Hispanic codes and the British common law. The Hispanic codes is the King of Spain says, here's what you're going to do over there. So he wrote the laws for people coming here. It's like if you go to Mars, we're going to write laws that you're going to obey before you even get there. We're not going to let you write the laws over in Mars. And that's what he did. Through the years, the first time they did it was in 1570. He said, all the laws that I've been issuing since 1492, we're going to compile them into a set of codes called a compilation of laws for the New World. And so they did this about every 100 years. I have the 1680 version. And in Spanish, it's called Recopilación de leyes de los reinos de las Indias. The compilation of laws of the New World of the New Indies. Oh, they thought they were in India, so they called it the New Indies. And this is a compilation of law. This is one of 5 volumes. To have all the laws that the king wrote by 1680, they had to have 5 volumes this big, leather bound. And I brought you to one that's got the alcaldes. It's in several titles. They call them títulos. And I just wanted to share this book with you. You'll forgive me, I lost my place on the alcaldes, artilleros. Libro, here we go. No, that's alcaldes. Well, I'm sorry. I pulled my page out and I lost it. Well, I'm not going to read it to you. I was going to read it to you, but I lost my place. I just have to tell you that. So, suffice it to say that in this book, it literally says, I'm sorry I lost my place, so I can't read it to you. But it literally says all the duties that Art was saying in detail. And by detail, I mean, I want you to know that it tells everything the alcalde was going to do. From 1570, 1680, every detail, all the powers of the alcalde. And so when the alcaldes here in San Antonio did whatever they did, either as mayor or as county judge, which is modern terms we use today, they were following the exact orders that the king laid out in his edict in 5 volumes. And it's as firm, his duties were as firm as your plaza. Because in here, it also says any city of the Empire of Spain, wherever it is, in the Philippines, in North Africa, wherever it is in the world, including San Antonio, will have the cathedral on the town plaza. It will have the Casa Capitular on the town plaza. And it will have the homes of the hombres buenos, the big families. So what you're living today, the very structure of your city right here 1 block away, the plaza, was dictated by the book, by the king. And it starts out, this book starts out, Yo el Rey. I, the king, hereby order that this and that is going to be this way. 5 volumes. He's telling you how you're going to live. And then he ends it the same way. I hereby order this and that and that. You 5 volumes of what I'm going to order you. And then he ends it, Yo el Rey, I the king. And this is what Texas law says that it will be seen that by legislative progression. Your law today comes from here. So the significance, Norma, of the alcalde is you. Significance is anybody that comes to Texas. And why? Well, they come from California, Ohio, Michigan, Kansas.
Yeah.
They become Texans. They become proud Texans. Whether they come from Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, they become Tejanos. And don't you forget it, you can come from either side of the border and you become a proud Tejano. And the people who guided it all, the true father of the vecindario is your alcalde. Anthony, you not only have a wonderful organization, sir, And you know it's a lot of work. You set your goals. You're not just going to revere these people and keep them alive, their spirit alive in San Antonio. You're not just going to tell everybody who wants to come here from California, hey, you can come here, but you eat guacamole and you, by gosh, become a Tejano. That's right. You're not just going to do that. You're going to have a building. And you're going to have a Hall of Alcaldes. And you're going to let these people know you can come here, but you will learn the history of these people. And you will know. You can come from Tennessee. But the thing you're proud of is to be a Tejano. You can be rich. You can be a lawyer. But you want to wear cowboy boots and be a rancher. Forget. Because you want to be a Tejano. Not normal? That's what you're doing. It's not a lot of work, Anthony. It's not a lot of emotion and spirit. It's a charge, my friend. I hereby charge you to finish your monument. You put up that building. And I want to come when you finish your building, Anthony. I want to be in it. I want to walk down the hall of Alcaldes. Normal. We're going to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Estelina. That was amazing. He and I got together several years ago. We had breakfast before we got started on Los Alcaldes, and I was talking to him about doing this, and he told me it needs to be done. It is time. It's a charge that we have that's been put upon all of us. And he told me that this is not just for the moment. This project is going to last us. It's going to. We're all going to be dead, and it's still going to be going because there's so much information on it. And I'm so glad to be a part of this. Like many of you have said, that we've come together as one to work on this project, and look where it's going. Thank you, Dr. Thin, I really appreciate that. Okay, so now, without further ado, I want to introduce to you the Honorable Lucy Adame-Clark, Bexar County Clerk. She's a friend. The way we met, it was amazing. I don't know if you want to mention that later, but it was amazing how she and I came across each other. Here we are today. So Lucy Adame-Clark is the first Latina and the first woman elected as a Bexar County Clerk. She was born and raised in San Antonio, Tejana. Mrs. Adame-Clark is a mother of two beautiful children and the wife of a sheriff's deputy. Mrs. Adame-Clark devoted 21 years to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. She serves as the Bexar County Treasurer and is a member of the Bexar County Bail Bond Board. She's also the chairman of the Records Management Committee. Her duties as a county clerk include maintaining the records of Commissioners Court, probate and mental health courts, auxiliary jail court, and 15 county courts at law. She is in charge of recording all public records, including land records, real property, and vital statistics records, such as marriage licenses and assumed names. She also maintains the Spanish archive records from the 1700s, representing Bexar County's foundation. Mrs. Adame-Clark is very active also in her community and has served in many leadership capacities. She is committed to serving the citizens of Bexar County. She's also has been and will continue to be a prominent and very involved community activist and member of the community. Welcome, Honorable Lucy Adame-Clark.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here on this special day. Ms. Norma Aceniega Langwell. We're coming out of the public library. And somehow, like a magnet, we just came together. And we just started talking about genealogy. She didn't even know me from yesterday, and I didn't even know her. And we had about an hour conversation, and it just happened just like that. And she went away, and I went away. So then I had a meeting with another group. And somehow she ends up at the table where I'm having this meeting at for breakfast. So Diosito had a plan. That's what I'm trying to say. So Diosito had a plan. But Lois, I just want to say, as a forensics examiner myself, I was a lane forensic examiner at the Bear County Sheriff's Office. Your dedication, your passion, because of the fact that these individuals don't have a voice. We were the voice for the victims. We were the voice to solve crime. So to hear you speak of the dedication, passion, and why you did it is why I did my job so well at the Sheriff's Office for 21 years. So I want to say thank you. It takes a lot to do that job. So it's an honor to have you here. Dr. Tejerina is a Tejana of San Antonio. Born and raised here in San Antonio, I'll be 49 years old next month. I am proud to hear what you said because somos hispanas, tejanas, americanas, and many people forget where they come from. We're not this tejana, not this mexicana, hispana, americana. I'm very proud to speak Spanish or English. My father was born in 1937, was still living, and he said he used to get hit for speaking Spanish. And it's heartbreaking to know that that happened, you know, in past history. So my children, who I tell them, you better be proud to speak Spanish because I will speak. No. So I'm always proud to say, I tell them, speak Espanol, be proud of who you are. But the Adame comes from my father. I have no brothers, actually. I had a brother who passed away for 6 months. So we're 5 girls in that family. So this is not a traditional, it's an honor of me carrying the Adame last name for our father, because he has no man or voice to carry out the name. That's why I'm Adame-Clark. But in closing, I want you to know that that same book that the Alcaldes followed is the same book that the county clerks followed. As I got elected and came into office in 2019, my duties are written out. Like area elected officials' duties are written out, and we need to follow it. If you read the resume of the county clerk myself, who just came into office, I have done over with my staff, over 20-something projects in 3 years. And the biggest project historically is the preservation of our beautiful historical records that go back to the early 1700s. That will not only be preserved, they will be digitized and available to you, the public. So our constituents and our students can read this information, how it was written, how they can interpret on their own, not them assuming it was done this way, not interpreting the other. I am in charge of unlocking the history as the Bear County Clerk. So every one of you, I want to say thank you for being the lucha, the voice, for the beautiful history of Bear County. But Norma, you first. You were determined, you were dedicated. And when you and Art came to me and said, will you sponsor a portrait? Without even hesitating and saying no, I told you both yes. I was more than honored to sponsor one of the portraits because I know the forensic that comes behind it, because I was a forensic analyst and I heard about you. And with no hesitation, I said yes, because it takes a lot of dedication. So please don't stop. Anthony, I got you for breakfast. I'm telling you right now, I'm here till next year. Si Dios quiere, I don't know what happens after here. But as long as I'm here, I will always support and always dedicate my time on how any way I can help you and any historical commission that belongs to any university. Because as the county clerk, that is our responsibility. But first of all, I want to thank the DRT, Leslie, and I want to thank the Historical Commission, and I want to thank the Alcaldes Commission, and most of all, I want to thank my staff.